I'm standing in the CEO's office on a Monday morning, surrounded by 12 executives who are trying very hard not to look at me directly. The CEO, Marcus Williams, is sitting behind his mahogany desk, looking like he's aged 10 years overnight. His hands are trembling as he grips the armrests of his leather chair. The room smells like expensive cologne and fear. Stanley. His voice cracks slightly when he says my name. Please, just make it fast. I take off my suit jacket slowly, deliberately, and fold it over the back of a chair. Every eye in the room tracks my movements. These are people who once looked at me with condescension, with dismissal, with the casual cruelty of those who've decided someone isn't worth their respect. Now they're looking at me like I'm holding a grenade with the pin already pulled. Because in a way, I am. I place a thick binder on the conference table. The sound it makes, that solid thump of substantial weight, echoes in the silent room like a judge's gavel. The cover is labeled in bold letters. The truth you buried. Someone gasps. The CFO actually stands up, then sits back down like his legs won't hold him. The CEO closes his eyes. They all know. They all know what's coming. But to understand how we got here, to understand why these powerful people are terrified of a man they fired 6 weeks ago, we need to go back to where this really started. 6 weeks earlier, my manager Rebecca called me into her office with a sympathetic expression that didn't reach her eyes. Stanley, we need to talk about some organizational changes. That phrase, organizational changes, is corporate speak for you're about to get screwed, and we're going to make it sound like business strategy. Your position is being phased out, she continued, not quite meeting my gaze. Budget constraints, restructuring, you know how it is. We'll give you a generous severance package, of course. 2 weeks. 2-week severance after 8 years with the company. 8 years of 60-hour weeks, of missed dinners with my son, of building systems and processes that made this division profitable. 2 weeks. When? My voice was steady despite the sick feeling in my stomach. End of week, Rebecca said, already looking at her computer screen like I'd been dismissed. We've brought in your replacement. She starts tomorrow, actually. Management wants a smooth transition. My replacement was already here. Hired before they even told me I was being fired. The humiliation was deliberate, designed to make sure I understood my place, or lack thereof. The next day, I met my replacement, Emily, a bright-eyed 24-year-old whose main qualification seemed to be that she was the CEO's niece. She was nice enough, enthusiastic, completely unqualified for a senior analyst position. While I packed my desk, 8 years of work fitting into 2 cardboard boxes, the entire team threw a loud welcome party for Emily in the conference room adjacent to my office. I could hear them through the walls, laughter, champagne corks popping, someone making a toast about fresh energy and new perspectives. The CEO himself passed by my open door during the celebration. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second, and then he looked away, actually looked away, and kept walking. That's when I knew for certain. This wasn't downsizing. This wasn't budget constraints. This was a deliberate removal, and everyone was in on it except me. As I was boxing up my desk, Rajesh, a junior engineer I'd mentored for 2 years, approached nervously. He looked around to make sure no one was watching, then pulled out his phone. Stanley, I need to show you something. I recorded it by accident during the leadership meeting last week. He hit play, and I heard voices I recognized, executives I'd worked with for years, people I'd considered, if not friends then, at least professional allies. Stanley's too soft. He won't fight back. He'll take the severance and leave quietly like everyone else we've pushed out. That was the CFO, James. Good. He's been a problem since he started flagging those compliance issues. Always making us look bad with his audits and his concerns. That was Rebecca, my manager, the woman who'd just given me the sympathetic organizational changes speech. The nephew plan worked perfectly. Emily gets a senior position, Stanley gets pushed out, and we can finally move forward without someone constantly questioning our decisions. The recording continued for another minute, them laughing, congratulating themselves on the clean removal, discussing how they'd planned this for months. My blood ran cold as I listened, but my face remained calm. I thanked Rajesh quietly, asked him to send me the file, and went back to packing. But inside, something had shifted. They thought I was soft. They thought I wouldn't fight back. They had no idea what they'd just awakened. I picked up my son Marcus, named after a better man than the CEO who shared his name, from school that afternoon. He was 7 years old, perceptive in the way children are, and he immediately sensed something was wrong. "Daddy, are you okay?" he asked from the back seat, his small voice worried. Yes, I lied, forcing a smile in the rearview mirror. Everything's fine, buddy. That night, after Marcus fell asleep, I sat in my home office and made a silent promise to myself and to my son. They will never make me feel powerless again. More importantly, they will never get away with treating people the way they'd treated me. Because if they'd done this to me, a senior analyst with 8 years of service, how many others had they destroyed? How many people had they pushed out, humiliated, and discarded? Then I realized something that made me smile for the first time in days. I had everything I needed to destroy them. For 2 years, I'd been the compliance officer in addition to my analyst duties. I'd authored audits, flagged irregularities, written reports about financial discrepancies and ethical concerns. I'd presented these concerns to leadership multiple times, and every single time they'd dismissed me, buried the reports, told me I was being overly cautious and not a team player. I'd kept copies of everything. Every audit, every flagged transaction, every email where I warned them about compliance violations, every report I'd written that they'd ignored or actively suppressed. It was all backed up on my personal encrypted cloud storage. Perfectly legal since I was the author of the documents and they pertained to my professional work. And now, suddenly, I had the time and the motivation to put it all together into something that couldn't be ignored or buried. The next morning, I sent one carefully worded email to David Chun, the COO of our biggest competitor, Tech Vision Systems. David and I had met at industry conferences, had always been cordial, professional. In my email, I mentioned I'd recently left my position and had information he might find valuable regarding market opportunities. 40 minutes later, my phone rang. Stanley? David Chun. I got your email. I'm very interested in what you have to say. Can you meet me tomorrow? His voice was eager, almost excited. I can make lunch work, I replied, keeping my tone professional. Excellent. And Stanley? Bring everything you have. I have a feeling this conversation might be mutually beneficial. Before my official departure date, I returned to the office one last time to hand over my building access card. The server room door was propped open, the IT team was doing maintenance, and I walked past it on my way to HR. Something made me stop. The servers contained copies of all the reports I'd authored over the past 2 years, the ones that had been archived and filed away. Reports that officially existed in the company system, that I had legal right to as their author. That would be much harder for them to claim were fabricated if I had both my personal copies and the server versions with matching timestamps. I didn't hack anything. I didn't access private information. I simply downloaded my own work, reports authored by Stanley Morrison, compliance officer, all bearing my digital signature and authorization codes. It took 20 minutes and filled 3 USB drives. Perfectly legal. Perfectly documented. Perfectly damning. The steakhouse where I met David Chun was quiet, expensive, the kind of place where deals that reshape industries happen over rare beef and single malt. David was already there when I arrived, and he brought his head of legal, a sharp woman named Patricia who looked at me with the assessing gaze of someone trying to determine if I was legitimate or wasting their time. I placed my binder on the table. I'd spent 3 sleepless nights compiling everything into a clear, chronological narrative of corruption. David opened it and started reading. His expression changed from curious to shocked to coldly furious within 5 pages. This will collapse their entire expansion plan, he muttered, flipping through documentation of falsified reports that made them appear more profitable than they were, enabling them to secure a massive loan for acquisition. They're borrowing against fictional assets. Patricia was reading over his shoulder, making notes. This is fraud. Securities fraud if they've misrepresented to investors, which it looks like they have based on these quarterly reports. Stanley, are you willing to testify to the authenticity of these documents? I nodded. Every page is something I either wrote, witnessed, or was copied on. Every timestamp can be verified. Every signature can be checked. I'm not making accusations. I'm providing documentation. David looked at me with something approaching awe. Stanley, I'm going to be direct. I want to hire you. Senior Director of Compliance and Risk Management. You'd report directly to me. Your job would be to make sure Tech Vision never becomes what your old company has. And, he paused, you'd have the authority to build a team, implement real oversight, and actually have leadership listen when you flag concerns. The salary he quoted was nearly double what I'd been making. The title was 3 levels higher. But more than that, it was the respect in his voice, the acknowledgement that what I did mattered, that compliance wasn't just bureaucratic box checking, but the foundation of ethical business. I accept, I said, but I need 4 weeks before I start. I have something I need to finish first. David smiled, a predator's smile. Take your time. I have a feeling whatever you're planning will make the market very interesting. Just make sure when the dust settles, you're still available to start. The video Rajesh had given me, the one of executives mocking me and other fired employees, calling us soft, congratulating themselves on their manipulation. I anonymously uploaded it to a whistleblower website that specialized in corporate misconduct. I added no context, no explanation. Just the raw audio, the date, and the company name. It spread like wildfire. Within 48 hours, it was on LinkedIn, Twitter, industry blogs. News outlets picked it up. Tech company executives caught mocking fired employees. HR was forced to launch an internal investigation. The CEO released a statement about how these comments do not reflect our values, and appropriate action will be taken. But the damage was done. Current employees started asking questions. Former employees started sharing their own stories. Glassdoor reviews turned scathing. The best part, nobody knew it was me. I'd used anonymizing tools, uploaded from a coffee shop Wi-Fi network, left no digital fingerprints. Let them wonder. Let them panic trying to figure out who had turned against them. 3 days before my official end date, an intern named Sarah, quiet girl who'd always seemed uncomfortable with the office culture, approached me in the parking garage. "Mr. Morrison, I think they're hiding something." She handed me a USB drive with shaking hands. I accidentally saw these files when I was organizing the shared drive. I don't understand all of it, but it looks bad. Really bad. The files were bad. Worse than I'd imagined. Financial records showing bonuses paid to executives from funds that were supposed to be allocated to employee benefits. Emails discussing how to categorize fraudulent expenses as operational losses to avoid audit flags. Communications with auditors that contained coached responses to hide irregularities. They hadn't just been unethical, they'd been systematically criminal. I spent a week compiling everything into an airtight case. Every document cross-referenced with timestamps. Every suspicious transaction linked to the executive who authorized it. Every falsified report placed alongside the real numbers. Every warning I'd given them, documented and dated, showing they'd been aware of the problems and actively chosen to continue. I created a timeline that made the pattern undeniable. This wasn't mistakes or oversights. This was calculated fraud. The evidence fell into 5 categories. Falsified financial reports. Quarterly reports to the board and investors that inflated profits by reclassifying debts as assets, hiding losses through creative accounting, and fabricating revenue from deals that hadn't closed. Illegal bonuses. Executive bonuses paid from employee benefit funds, retirement contributions that were recorded but never deposited, and performance bonuses based on the falsified reports that they knew were fraudulent. Retaliation and discrimination. A pattern of firing or pushing out anyone who questioned practices, particularly targeting employees like me who had compliance oversight, with replacement hires that were universally less qualified but more compliant. Compliance violations. Documented safety issues that were ignored, environmental regulations that were skirted, and industry standards that were deliberately not met to cut costs. Email evidence. Hundreds of emails showing consciousness of guilt. Executives discussing how to hide problems, how to spin bad news, how to manipulate reports, how to silence whistleblowers. All of it legal to possess. All of it documented. All of it devastating. Rumors started spreading through the company. The board was angry about the viral video. Major shareholders were demanding explanations for the negative publicity. Someone leaked that an internal investigation was finding concerning irregularities. The CEO looked gray and sweaty every time I saw him in my final days. His assistant, who'd always been friendly to me, mentioned quietly that Marcus had been asking around about who might have leaked the video, whether it was me. Good. Let him wonder. Let him lose sleep trying to figure out if it was me, or someone else, or multiple people. Let the paranoia eat at him the way his casual cruelty had eaten at me. Then something unexpected happened. Emily, my replacement, accidentally forwarded an email chain containing fraudulent financial directives to the entire finance department instead of just the executives. The chain was explicit about cooking the books for the quarterly report. She was destroyed, crying in the bathroom, being screamed at by Rebecca. blamed for the exposure, even though she'd just been following orders she didn't understand. I felt bad for her, genuinely. She was just a kid who'd been handed a job she wasn't qualified for and used as a pawn in their games. But her mistake accelerated the timeline. The finance department started asking questions. Some of them forwarded the emails to compliance, my old department, now run by someone who actually cared. The walls were closing in. My phone rang with a number I'd blocked a week ago. The CEO's direct line. I answered it. Stanley. Marcus's voice was shaking. Could you come in? We need your expertise on some compliance matters. I almost laughed. They'd called me overly cautious and not a team player for raising these exact compliance matters. Now that everything was falling apart, suddenly they needed my expertise. I'm no longer employed there, I said calmly. I'd be happy to come in as a consultant. My rate is $5,000 an hour, minimum 4 hours, paid in advance. The silence stretched. Stanley, please. We need your help. You know this company better than anyone. You know the systems. I know the systems I built that you ignored, I interrupted. I know the warnings I gave that you dismissed. I know the reports I wrote that you buried. So yes, I know exactly what's wrong with your company, Marcus. The question is whether you're ready to actually face it. More silence. Then, what would it take for you to come in? I named my terms. I'll come in for 1 meeting. Every executive present. The full board. And I want it on record that I'm there as a consultant, not an employee. If you want my expertise, you'll get it. But you'll get the unvarnished truth, not the version you want to hear. Do we have a deal? He agreed. The meeting was set for Monday morning. 3 days away. That weekend, I organized everything. My son helped me without fully understanding what we were doing. What are all these papers, Daddy? Marcus asked, applying colored stickers to folders as I directed. These are documents that show when people make mistakes at work, buddy. I'm helping to clean up a mess. He nodded seriously, his little face solemn. Make it super clean, Daddy. Super duper clean. I will, I promised him. I really will. Each folder was color-coded, red for fraud, blue for compliance violations, yellow for retaliation, green for falsified reports. Within each folder, documents were organized chronologically with tabs and summary sheets. I'd created an executive summary, 10 pages that laid out the basics in language anyone could understand. Then supporting documentation, hundreds of pages of evidence, all referenced and indexed. Sunday night, I barely slept. Not from nervousness, but from anticipation. For 8 years, I'd tried to do the right thing within the system. I'd followed proper channels, reported to appropriate authorities, trusted that truth and integrity would matter. And I'd been punished for it, pushed out, humiliated. But tomorrow, I'd get to do something I'd never been allowed to do before. Tell the complete, unvarnished truth to people who couldn't dismiss me, couldn't fire me, couldn't silence me. Tomorrow, I'd have the floor. And they'd have to listen. Monday morning, I walked into that boardroom wearing my best suit, carrying my leather briefcase, looking like the professional I'd always been. The room fell silent when I entered. 12 executives plus the CEO, all arranged around the long conference table. And at the far end, for board members who'd flown in specifically for this meeting, including the chairman, an elderly man named Robert who'd founded the company 40 years ago and whose disappointment radiated like heat. Stanley, the CEO's voice was barely above a whisper. Thank you for coming. He stopped, swallowed hard, tried again. We need your help understanding some irregularities that have come to light. We hoped you might provide clarity. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hands were trembling. Please, he finally said, meeting my eyes with something like desperation. Just make it fast. I took off my jacket, folded it carefully over the back of a chair. The room was so quiet I could hear the HVAC system humming. I opened my briefcase and removed the binder. 64 pages of documentation, professionally bound, with tabs and an index. The sound it made when I placed it on the table, that solid thump, made someone gasp. The cover read, The Truth You Buried, a comprehensive analysis of fraud, compliance violations, and retaliation at Tech Core Systems, 2021 to 2023. Underneath in smaller text. Compiled by Stanley Morrison, former senior compliance analyst. I slid it toward the center of the table. The CEO reached for it with shaking hands, then pulled back like it might burn him. The CFO's face had gone white. Rebecca was staring at the table, refusing to look up. The board chairman pulled the binder toward himself and began to read. For 2 years, I began, my voice steady and calm. I warned you about these issues. 12 formal reports. 17 emails flagged as urgent. 6 presentations to executive leadership. Every time, I was told I was overreacting, being too cautious, not understanding the business realities. Every time, my concerns were dismissed, minimized, or actively suppressed. I opened the binder to the first tab. This is my initial compliance report from March 2021, flagging irregular financial practices in the acquisition accounting. I recommended immediate audit and correction. The board chairman was reading, his expression darkening with each page. What action was taken on this report? He asked quietly. It was filed and forgotten, I replied. When I followed up 6 weeks later, I was told by the CFO, I looked at James, that I needed to be more of a team player and less of an obstacle. I turned to the next section. This is documentation of the systematic misrepresentation of quarterly earnings from Q2 2021 through Q3 2023. The numbers reported to the board and to investors were falsified through creative accounting that reclassified debt as assets and projected unrealized revenue as actual income. I pulled out specific examples, showing the real numbers alongside the reported numbers. The discrepancies were staggering. Profits inflated by up to 40% in some quarters. Where did you get these real numbers? The board chairman demanded. I compiled them from source data as part of my compliance work, I explained. These are the actual figures from our financial systems before they were adjusted for reporting. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. I continued methodically through each section. The illegal bonuses, documented with bank records showing executive payments from funds designated for employee benefits. The retaliation, a list of 12 employees who'd raised concerns and were subsequently fired or pushed out, with my case as the most recent example. The compliance violations, safety issues, environmental shortcuts, regulatory corners cut. Every accusation backed by documentation. Every claim supported by evidence they'd created themselves. The CEO broke first. I didn't know the full extent. I cut him off, my voice sharp for the first time. You knew. I told you. 12 times in writing. You knew and chose to do nothing because it was easier to get rid of me than to address the problems. I pulled out a folder containing every email I'd sent him, every report I'd submitted, each one marked with his read receipt and his responses dismissing my concerns. His face crumbled as the board chairman read through them. You were explicitly warned, the chairman said, his voice cold with fury. This young man did his job perfectly, and you ignored him. The chairman looked at me with something like respect. How bad is it? Really? Based on the falsified reports, you approved a loan for expansion that the company couldn't actually afford. You're over-leveraged by approximately $40 million. The quarterly reports you've been giving shareholders are fraudulent, which means you're potentially facing securities fraud charges. The compliance violations could result in regulatory fines in excess of $20 million. And the pattern of retaliation creates massive legal liability. I paused. Conservative estimate? This company is 3 months from insolvency if the truth comes out publicly. And it will come out because I've already filed reports with the SEC and the State Labor Board. The room erupted. Executives shouting at each other, pointing fingers, making excuses. The CFO stood up so fast his chair fell over. 2 of the VPs actually started crying. One executive ran to the bathroom. I heard him vomiting through the wall. The CEO sat with his head in his hands, completely broken. The board chairman banged his fist on the table. Quiet. The room fell silent. He looked at the other board members. We need an emergency vote on executive removal. It took 10 minutes. Every executive implicated in the fraud, which was all of them except Emily, who was just incompetent, not criminal, was removed from their positions effective immediately. 4 executives resigned on the spot, hoping it would save them from prosecution. It wouldn't. The board chairman turned to me, his expression a mixture of respect and desperation. Stanley, the board would like to offer you the position of Chief Compliance Officer, reporting directly to the board. We need someone we can trust to clean this up, to rebuild what these people destroyed. Whatever they were paying you, we'll triple it. Whatever authority you need, you'll have it. Please. Every jaw in the room dropped. The executives who remained, the ones who hadn't resigned or been voted out, stared at me with shock and something that might have been hope. Emily was crying quietly, probably thinking she'd be fired too. The board members were nodding, clearly having discussed this possibility. For a moment, I was tempted. Chief Compliance Officer. Direct board oversight. The authority to actually fix things. The vindication of being offered an executive position by the very people who'd watched me get pushed out. But then I thought about David Chen's offer. About Tech Vision, a company that had never had these problems because they'd built ethical practices from the ground up. About the respect I'd felt in that meeting, the way David had listened to me, the way Patricia had taken my concerns seriously. I shook my head slowly. I appreciate the offer. I really do. But I already have a better job. The shock in the room was palpable. You're turning down a C-suite position? The chairman asked, genuinely baffled. I am, I confirmed. Because I don't want to spend the next 3 years cleaning up a mess that should never have been made. I want to build something good from the start. And I found a company that will let me do that. I gathered my briefcase and jacket. The documentation I've provided is yours to use in your cleanup efforts. I've also filed copies with the appropriate regulatory authorities. I'll cooperate with any investigation and testify if needed. But I'm done with this company. You had a good man trying to help you, and you threw him away. That was your choice. Now you get to live with it. I walked out of that building for the final time. The sun was bright, the air was fresh, and I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because of the revenge, though I won't lie, seeing their faces as their world collapsed was satisfying. But because I'd proven something to myself. Standing up for what's right isn't weakness. Integrity isn't naivete. And the people who mistake kindness for softness are always shocked when they discover what quiet strength really looks like. My son was waiting in the car with my sister, who'd agreed to watch him during the meeting. How was work, Daddy? Marcus asked as I slid into the driver's seat, his little face hopeful and trusting. Finished, I said, starting the engine. All done. And guess what? Daddy got a new job. A really good one. His face lit up. Does that mean you'll be happy again? The question broke my heart and healed it at the same time. Yeah, buddy. I'm going to be happy again. That evening, I took Marcus to his favorite pizza place, the one with the arcade games and the terrible animatronic band he loved. We ate too much pizza, played too many games, and laughed until my sides hurt. At one point, as he was concentrating fiercely on a racing game, I just watched him. This beautiful, innocent kid who'd been my reason for staying strong through everything. Daddy? He asked later, as I was tucking him into bed. Are the bad people gone now? I smoothed his hair back, thinking about all the ways I could answer that question. The bad people can't hurt us anymore, I settled on. And Daddy made sure they can't hurt other people either. Sometimes grown-ups do wrong things, but other grown-ups have to make sure those wrong things get fixed. He nodded sleepily. You're a good daddy. You fix things. He yawned. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Marcus. More than anything in the whole world. As he drifted off to sleep, I sat there for a while, watching him breathe, feeling the weight of responsibility and love and fierce protectiveness that parenthood brings. Everything I'd done, the late nights compiling evidence, the risk of standing up to powerful people, the methodical dismantling of corrupt executives, all of it was ultimately for him. To show him that integrity matters. That standing up for what's right is worth the cost. That his father was someone worthy of respect. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my new office at Tech Vision, corner space, windows overlooking the city, my name on the door with Senior Director of Compliance and Risk Management underneath. My team is small but brilliant. 3 analysts who actually care about ethics, a lawyer who understands that compliance isn't about avoiding lawsuits but about doing right, and Sarah, the intern who gave me that USB drive, who I hired away from TechCore the moment she graduated. The news about TechCore made national headlines. The CEO and CFO face criminal charges. Multiple executives have been barred from holding corporate positions. The company itself was acquired by a private equity firm in a fire sale, its reputation destroyed. Emily, bless her, found a job at a nonprofit where her enthusiasm is valued, and she's not in over her head. She sent me a thank you note, saying that getting fired was the best thing that could have happened to her. David Chin stops by my office one afternoon with a bottle of expensive scotch. Thought you might want to celebrate, he says, setting it on my desk. Celebrate what? I ask. He grins. Tech Vision just won the acquisition contract that TechCore had to forfeit. The one they'd fraudulently obtained with falsified financial reports. We're entering 3 new markets, and it's all because you had the integrity to expose the truth. That's worth celebrating. We toast to integrity, to justice, to second chances. You know, David says thoughtfully, You could have destroyed them out of spite, could have exposed everything publicly, ruined them all, and walked away laughing. But instead, you gave them a chance to fix it internally first. That's real integrity. I shrug. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because it was right. The fact that justice happened to align with what I wanted, that's just a bonus. That evening, I pick up Marcus from school, something I can do now with my better hours and healthier work-life balance. "Daddy," he shouts, running to the car with a drawing in his hand. "Look what I made." It's a crayon picture of the two of us holding hands, standing in front of a building with a sign that says Daddy's new work. Above us, he's drawn a sun with a smiling face and the words "happy ending" in his careful 7-year-old handwriting. It's perfect, I tell him, my throat tight with emotion. Absolutely perfect. My teacher said everyone's story has an ending, Marcus explains as we drive home. And happy endings are the best ones. Did you get your happy ending, Daddy? I look at him in the rearview mirror, this incredible kid who gives my life meaning and purpose, and I think about everything that's happened. The betrayal, the fight, the victory, the new beginning. Yeah, buddy, I say softly. We got our happy ending. We really did. And driving through the city as the sun sets, my son's drawing on the passenger seat, a job I love waiting for me tomorrow, and the weight of justice finally served lifting from my shoulders. I realize he's right. This is a happy ending. Not because I destroyed my enemies, though that happened. Not because I got a better job, though I did. But because I taught my son that integrity matters, that standing up to bullies works, that good people don't have to finish last. They tried to break me. They called me soft. They thought I wouldn't fight back. And they were right about one thing. I didn't fight back the way they expected. I didn't rage or threaten or play their games. I just did what I'd always done, documented the truth, followed the rules, and let their own actions speak against them. Sometimes the strongest revenge is simply letting the truth be told. And sometimes the sweetest victory is the one where you walk away not bitter or angry, but genuinely, completely, peacefully happy. That's what I have now. That's what they tried to take from me and failed. That's what made this fight worth fighting. My son's happy ending. And mine too.